At the end of 2019, I decided to throw my ring in the hat, and try out making a YouTube video. And I had basically a collection of Logitech webcams, and at the time I had a number of people asking me what the difference was, which one I suggest, and I thought, well, here's a good opportunity. Let's go ahead and make a video about that. I had no idea what I was doing, and it shows. For those of you that have seen it, thank you for sticking around and not just bailing on me after watching that. It had great information, but the audio, the editing, the camera quality, everything, I will admit, was pretty bad. Fast forward almost 2 years later, and I now have a collection of webcams. I have 13 that I'm going to go ahead and show you in this video. No, this camera is not one of those webcams. Sorry. This is the Sony a5100 mirrorless camera with an aftermarket lens on it. Go check out that video. It's amazing how cheap I got this lens for. Before I go any farther, I had to turn off some of those lights back there. That was distracting me. On all of these cameras, I am going to be making sure that all of my lighting stays exactly the same. I'm going to stay in the same spot. The mustache may change. The shirt is even going to stay the same. And I say that because I'm not going to be able to do all this in one night. I already know that. I'm going to be testing all of these cameras at 1080p and their highest frames per second. Some of them are 30, some of them are 60. We are going to be looking at the cameras right out of the box, their default settings. I won't change anything on the cameras or in OBS or anything at all. We're just going to take a look. We're going to do this in low lighting, and we're also going to do this in my current lighting that I have. Then we're going to also take a look at all of these cameras with the best settings that I think I can get them to. And finally, we are going to do a FPS test, frames per second test on all of these cameras. This is going to be my first time testing the frames, so bear with me on that one. I'm Dad, and hopefully I don't waste time. And as always, first, a word from our sponsor. Shout out to the sponsors of this video: Logitech, Goswer, Unzano, Nexigo, FiFine, Mosonth, and PETERE. Just kidding. None of those are paying me or giving me anything to make this video. It is going to be brutal and honest. Okay, so the first ones that we're going to check out are the Logitechs. All right, I like to do things pretty quick around here, so I'm going to go through all these cameras fairly quickly, and I'm going to do that by showing you the Logitech C920 and the C922 at the same time, because for the most part, these cameras are identical. The C922 can be set to 720p at 60 frames per second, and it also comes with a free copy of some software, which these days there's plenty of others out there that do the same thing for free. Both these cameras are 1080p at 30 frames per second, 78-degree field of view, and they tilt up and down. They do have autofocus, and they do come with the Logitech G Hub software. This right here is the standard overhead lighting, and this is how it looks with a key light. I went into the settings and I turned off the auto exposure, and then I adjusted the gain only slightly, saturation up a little bit, sharpness up a little bit, turned off the auto white balance, and found where I thought it was nice. I felt like with the auto white balance on, it was too orange or yellow. Under normal lighting conditions, I moved the exposure down by 1 and then turned on the backlight compensation and moved the gain up a little bit, and then I really didn't touch anything else compared to when I had the key light on. Here we have the Logitech C930. This was my go-to camera for quite a long time, mostly because 90 field of view versus the 78 from both the C920 and C922. As you can see, you see a lot more. It's also 1080p, 30 frames per second. Again, G Hub software, but for some reason Logitech hasn't added the capability to use this camera in the hub. And just like the others, it has autofocus, and sadly to say, once again, it only tilts up and down. Here's the camera with a bright ring light. As you can see, it doesn't handle it well, so let's just move on to the custom settings. So after turning off the auto exposure and low light compensation, then we made adjustments. We turned up the brightness, we turned up sharpness, turned off auto white balance and adjusted it, lowered the gain a little bit. Overall, I would say this camera is really good when it doesn't have any really bright light source and you've made some adjustments to the settings. Fourth one on the list is the Mosonth, or Mosonth. I really don't know how to pronounce it, and I honestly, this is the first time I've even turned this one on. This is a 1080p autofocus. It does have a light on it. I'll show you that in a second. 60 frames per second, 65-degree field of view. 65, I don't know. Comparing it to the 78 that Logitech says theirs are at, I'm gonna say it's higher than 65. Just like the Logitech's, this camera will tilt up and down, but it also adjusts left and right, just so you can make sure wherever you have the camera, you can also turn it so it's pointing directly at you. Now the ring light on this one has white, off-white, or soft white, and then a middle ground between the two. And here we are with a bright key light turned on. Let's go ahead and get into the settings, see what we can figure out. When I went to turn off the auto exposure and set it, in order to get it so the lighting looked really good and everything looked like it should be, I had to turn the exposures down so low that we dropped a lot of frames and it was just way too choppy to even do it. So really, this is the closest I can do. I'm going to try it without the ring light. I think this is the best I can do. And I did not make a lot of changes to it. Every time I go in and I turn off low light compensation, the focus just is completely off. It's not focusing correctly. Turning auto exposure off doesn't work at all. I think I'm just going to move on. Here we have yet another webcam. The Goswer, Goswer. I honestly don't know how to pronounce it. They didn't tell me. Now, this camera is 1080p, 30 frames per second. It is the second of two cameras that have ring lights built in. This one does have autofocus. It does tilt up and down and left and right. And my daughter just got out of bed. It has white, soft white, off-white. You can also adjust the brightness on any of those. I could not find the listing that mentioned field of view. When we compare it to the Logitechs, the Mosonth, and some of the others, I'd say it's between 65, 75. We'll go with like 70. Right out of the box, it looks pretty good. Right now I have the white light turned on. I actually like that one even better. That looks pretty good. With the key light turned on and the soft white ring light on the camera turned on, I think this looks really good. I am truly impressed right out of the box. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to see if I can make it any better. I mean, not a huge difference. I didn't honestly do a lot. I tried changing the white balance. I tried turning off auto exposure, low light compensation. I changed the backlight compensation a little bit, the gain a little bit, gamma. I definitely bumped up the saturation by quite a bit, but overall, I didn't really need to do a lot. So I'm going to try it without the ring light. All right. Same thing. Didn't seem to be a lot that I could do. I'll just click on the defaults right now. I was able to brighten it up a little bit. Saturation needs a small bump up, but sharpness in every test that I did needed to be bumped up all the way. Another Goswer webcam. This one, all the specs are exactly the same from the last one. The only difference is the last one had a ring light on it. We'll go ahead and see the difference right off the bat. This one has more of a red tint to it compared to the other one. So not exactly sure why. Hopefully we'll be able to get rid of that in the adjusted settings. Okay, so for settings 1, I changed basically everything. Everything had minor adjustments, but massive improvement. I think this looks incredible. Compared to what it was out of the box, this is a huge difference. I'm going to go in and I'm going to try it one more time with a different way of doing the settings and then see what we come up with. All right, well, I feel like I was able to get a fairly similar outcome. I didn't get too much into it by keeping the auto exposure turned on. So either way, you could make it work. So even with just regular lighting on, again, very simple changes. For the most part, the camera is really great, but something seems to be broken with the white balance. Bumped up the saturation, sharpness all the way, contrast up a little bit, messing with the backlight compensation, and the gain completely different. So for the most part, this camera out of the box, you're not going to be happy with it. If you are up for making changes to the settings, then you can turn this into a really great camera. All right, here we are, day 2 of me recording this. Oh, there's a hole in this shirt now. Up next is the Unzano HD610. If you've watched any of my videos before, you know I'm a fan of the Unzanos. As you can see, pretty big difference in field of view. We've got 1080p 30 frames per second, 98-degree field of view so far in the ones that I've shown you. This is the highest field of view, and you can kind of tell it's showing more of the room along with garbage that's on my floor. Camera will adjust up and down, as I call the nod, and also back and forth. It does have autofocus. It does not come with any sort of software. This is how it looks right out of the box with some basic overhead lighting. Here it is with my key light turned on. I'll go ahead and see what I can do when I adjust the settings. But the camera was pretty blown out, so I turned off the auto exposure, changed it to -6. White balance, I wasn't actually able to adjust it. As soon as I tried, it was incredibly red or purple or green. I couldn't find a good balance no matter where I put it. Saturation, I turned up quite a bit. Sharpness a little bit, and I think this is the best I could do with a very bright light. So here it feels like it's pretty much the same thing. I made very similar changes to all the different settings, and I ended up with just overall improvement. This is the Unzano 920. Sorry, there's no autofocus. That's better. 1080p 30 frames per second. It says 110 field of view. I can definitely see a lot more, and I still haven't cleaned up this mess back here because I forgot. Out of the box, under some regular overhead lighting, I'm quite surprised. The colors look great. The lighting is good. It's clean. It's smooth. Everything looks good. Under some bright light, as you can see, that side of my face, too bright. So let's go into the settings and see what we can do. Some minor changes to a few different things. I didn't change the white balance, turned off the auto exposure, gain, actually turned the gain down only by a tiny bit with the auto exposure at -5. Sharpness, turned that all the way up, saturation up just a little bit. So just minor changes here and there, and with the bright key light, I think it looks great. These results are quite interesting to me because I feel like out of the box, it's just some regular overhead lighting. It looked better than it did with the bright key light, but then if you go in and make changes to the settings, it's the other way around. It actually looks better with a bright key light than it does making changes with overhead lighting. So next up, we have 2 Nexigo webcams, and I've done videos solely on these 2 cameras, so check out the links down below for those, and you can see more details. This one is the Nexigo N950 4K at 30 frames per second, a 90-degree field of view. The Nexigo cameras do have their own software, and this is a big deal because you can save your settings and save them as different presets, load them in later on, and that's huge because the only other one that does that in this group is Logitech. And this is also the only one in the group that comes with a remote control. Go check out the other video if you want some more information on this camera. For the most part, this is the best I could do with just some basic overhead lighting. I'm gonna try it again with the ring light. Here we are with the ring light turned on, and this is much better. This is what we're looking for, right? Here we have the Nexigo N660p. Now, this one is 60 frames per second at 1080, 78-degree field of view, which is the same as the Logitech C920 and C922. This is one of only 2 webcams that I have that can tilt up and down, left and right, but also an interesting little tilt that can do here. It does have autofocus, and again, it does come with its own software, just like the 4K camera does. Does not have a ring light, does not have a remote control. I do need to say this right now, though. I could not get this at 1080p. Best I could do was 720. That said, I'm guessing at some point there's some user error or something with my computer, because go look at the other video that I did of this exact camera, link down below, because it is an awesome camera. Mostly the frames per second and everything is just fantastic. Now, these are the settings out of the box. We're gonna go ahead and load up the software, and there we go. I love this software. I love that you can click a button and it's already loaded, ready to go. Now, these settings are meant for the bright key light, so I'm gonna mess with it a little bit, see how we can do. So here's with some of the settings done with the normal overhead lighting, and now I'm gonna go ahead and see what I can do with the ring light on. So here it is with my settings preloaded and the ring light turned on. I think it looks great. And even still, as a reminder, this is at 720p. So you can imagine it looks even better in 1080. Okay, not the last one, but it's the cheapest one. I keep wanting to call it the PETERE, but I'm gonna go with PETERE. Didn't really have a model number, so I just called it the PETERE webcam. PETERE webcam. 1080p, 30 frames per second. It says 90-degree field of view. Pretty strong fisheye. Okay. It only tilts up and down. Does not have autofocus. Does not come with software. No remote. No ring light. On low light, the colors look very yellow. It's extremely grainy and fuzzy. I tried messing with the settings to get rid of that. No luck so far. Oh God. Just get this camera off me. So with that camera, I went into this, adjust the settings. It wouldn't let me change anything. And even what it would let me change, it did nothing. It didn't actually change anything. So we're just gonna move right along. Fine. You ready to go up there? All right, and the last one I have to show you for this video, a little bit different than the other ones, mostly because, well, I'll just show you something. Yeah, I wanted to show you guys this camera, but honestly, I didn't want to take it down. Just too lazy about it. This camera is the FiFine. Some of you may recognize that name. They make great USB microphones for cheap. This is the K420, max resolution of 2K, which is 1440p, 30 frames per second. The field of view is 108. Yeah, big numbers, looks great. For the right situation, this camera is awesome, and I think for me, this is where I wanted it. So this is where I put it, mounted it up high in the ceiling. This does not have autofocus, no software, no ring lights, no remote control. This right here is just with this light, of course, the light from my monitors and the other colors in the room, just like all the other cameras. I haven't done any changes to the settings, and this looks to me incredible. Very accurate. Colors are great. Looks good. Lighting is impressive for having such a bright light directly at it. I know this isn't an easy direct comparison with the other ones, but I still wanted to show you this camera. Here it is with just the overlight on. Things got a little bit more orange or red down on these surfaces because it's trying to adjust for the lack of light. So that camera really is fantastic, but it's also the second camera now where when I tried to adjust any of the settings, nothing happened. The settings were there, just nothing happened when I changed them. All right, I'm quickly going to go through the prices of all these cameras that I've shown you, starting with the Logitechs. C920, currently available at $72.90. The C922 is at $91.46. And the C930 is at $103.41. Now, for those of you that remember before 2020, these cameras were about half that price, all of them. So the prices on those have gone way up over the last year and a half. Next, we have the Goswer. I'm sorry, I still don't know how to pronounce that one. The one with the ring light, $39.99, currently has a $20 off coupon. Then we have the regular Goswer, coming in at $19.99. Next, we have Unzano. The HD 920 is at $39.99 with a 5% off discount. Then we have the HD 610. It's not available anymore, but they do have a newer model. Link down below for $45.99. Next, we have the Nexigo N660p at $55.24 with a 10% off discount. The N950 at $129 with a 15% discount. That is the 4K. Then we have the FiFine K420 at $43.99. Mosonth 1080p is at $44.99 with a 20% off discount. And the PETERE webcam, the PETERE webcam. It says it's not available anymore, but there is a newer model that looks exactly like it at $12.99. These rankings are in two different categories: the default settings right out of the box and what I got out of them after making some changes. Each camera's FPS test was included in their final score. So of course, the higher the frames per second, the more points they got. And to give you an example, I'll show you with the Logitech C920 and 922 that I did at the same time. I took 1 second of myself clapping and then slowed it down to 10% of the speed. That way I was able to count every single frame that it captured. In scoring the cameras, I have 7 different columns. 6 of them are worth 10 points, and the last one, well, it's just the FPS test, so I guess we could say that's 60, giving the total possible points of 120. Number 1 spot goes to the Nexigo N660p. It was in second until that FPS test came out and hit a 34, which sounds really good compared to the rest, although it's advertised at 60. N660 ended up with a score of 81. Coming in second was the Goswer with the ring light. Just 80 points, just missed it by 1 point. With an FPS test hitting 31 when it's advertised at 30. Third place goes to the Nexigo N950, the 4K camera, at 74 points. And fourth was the FiFine K420 2K camera with 73 points. We have the Unzano HD 920, 68 points. Tied with the Goswer regular camera, the Logitech C922 with 67 points. The Unzano HD 610, 63 points. The Logitech C930, 60 points. The Logitech C920, 60 points. The Mosonth 1080p FHD, 58 points. And in the end, the PETERE webcam, 57 points. I hope this video was helpful to someone. There's a lot of information that I didn't include because I knew this video was going to be way too long, and I don't like wasting your time. There's going to be a lot more information and a lot of links down below, so check that out if you are interested in any of these cameras. This was night 3 of me trying to get this done, so I'm out of here. I'm going to go to bed. I'm dead, and hopefully I didn't waste your time with this one.
If you only got a mustache.
All right, we like to do things pretty quick here, so I'm going to go through all this information fast. So, no, I'm not supposed to be on this camera. Wrong camera. Save that for the bloopers. It's not blown out white on the side of my face. Nope. No, I'm not saying that. PETERE webcam. The PETERE webcam.